Okay. Thank you very much for joining us today at the Author in Me Literary Festival here at the Roald Dahl Museum. I am now very excited to introduce Imogen Bond, who is the Managing Director of Empathy Lab. It's a not-for-profit charity. No. A non-profit organisation, thank you, harnessing the empathy-building power of stories to develop young people's social and emotional skills. They want every child to benefit from an accessible, reading-based empathy education, supporting individual well-being and community cohesion to create a better world for everyone. Imogen was originally a theatre director specialising in work for young audiences and worked on a variety of national and local creative learning programmes. Imogen passionately believes that equitable access to arts and culture is key to a happier, healthier and kinder society. Thank you for joining us, Imogen.
Thanks for having me.
So we've talked a lot today about access to reading, about children, encouraging them to read, and statistics about children not reading as much. Where do you sit on that? What are your feelings?
I've got one here.
Oh, you've already got one. It's just me. I just got... Oh, no, she's turned that one off.
I do need this one on. Well, the National Literacy Trust stats tell us that children are reading less than ever. So the reading for pleasure stats that come out every year, well, the most recent ones that have come out this year say that only 1 in 3 children enjoy reading. And the problem with that is that enjoying reading is one of the best indicators we have of children's happiness now and in the future, and their future life chances as well. So children who enjoy reading, who choose to read away from school, the things that they have to read, those children are more likely to do better at school overall, not just in English and reading, but across the curriculum. They're more likely to have better mental health. They're more likely to earn more when they are growing up and going into jobs. So it is a really important thing that we need to think about. Why aren't children reading? And what the evidence is telling us about that. And there are lots of reasons why children aren't reading. A big one is obviously screens and all the distractions that there are in life. But I think it starts really early, from sort of early years. There's evidence to suggest, so HarperCollins, the publisher, did some research earlier this year that they brought out that suggests that parents aren't reading with children so much anymore, that it's become something that parents don't enjoy doing anymore. And we perhaps need to think about why that is, and if we can find ways to encourage parents to read with children so that they start that habit very early, because there are huge benefits to reading, not just in the way that you're gaining academically, but also in the way that your brain functions for social and emotional skills as well. So it is a really important thing, and the stats are not good at the moment. It's a bit depressing.
So how can we address that then? So I know we're talking about, and it feels like there's a lot of times at the moment where we go, well, the parents should be doing this or the teachers should be doing this. But there is a certain amount of that, and we all know that everyone is distracted by their phones and by screens. And it was suggested, one of our authors earlier said actually she read to her son until he was 14. And obviously there's the habit that we get into now, whereas once they get to, I don't know, maybe 8 or even younger, you stop reading to them. But actually by carrying that on, it's a really lovely moment to have. So what will your work with Empathy Lab, how do you sort of address that with because you're going to schools mostly, how do you get to the parents?
Well, so we work with schools, with libraries, with families. We work in all sorts of different ways with as many different organisations as we can. So our work has a number of different programmes. So the kind of big free programmes that we run, the Empathy Day Festival, which happens every summer in June, and we're just about to do Empathy Action Month, which happens in November. Those are free to take part in. We put out loads of free resource so that schools, families, libraries can take part in those. And that's really about drawing attention to the fact that reading is one of the best, most accessible ways that you can develop your empathy, which is a vital life skill that we all need to understand other people. It's interesting hearing Angus earlier. We need to empathise with people, we need to be able to step into their perspective and understand other people better. So reading's a really great way of doing that. But also, we have a big schools programme that we work with about 100 schools where we have an embedded programme where we work with teachers, we train teachers to bring into their everyday reading practice a number of different tools that enable them to really deliberately develop empathy skills through reading. And that is just a change of practice. It's a change of how schools might approach the way that they're teaching reading. So not that you get rid of the literacy skill, you're doing that at the same time, but you've got this added benefit by using creative, immersive ways of working with books and with stories, and really thinking about how you're sharing stories. Sharing stories is the most important part of this, that you're really using those to think about deliberately building empathy skills. So things like perspective taking, understanding your own emotions, being able to share your own feelings and understand the feelings of others. So in terms of that work that we do with schools, it's also available for families for free in those big programmes. But really, I think we're at a stage now where everybody's got to work together to make a change. It's not just the responsibility of schools, it's not just the responsibility of parents. Everybody needs to be thinking about how we can use reading more deliberately in a different way. We've had a big focus on the literacy skill of reading over, kind of government-backed through the national curriculum over the last probably 15 years. And that's led us down a particular route. We've now got very good readers. Children are coming out of school generally as good readers, but they're not choosing to read, they're not enjoying reading. And so maybe we need to look as a society about the way in which we bring reading into school and into homes, and think about what's fun to read, what do children really want to read, not what they have to read at school, and maybe changing the text that they're having to read at school as well, so that it becomes maybe shorter form, thinking really widely about what we mean by reading. Listening, audio is a really great way of building your perspective and understanding different people's stories. Graphic novels, thinking much more about the visual side, the visual literacy of reading is really important. Thinking about much shorter form content, because that's how our brains work now. Because of screens and social media, we need things to be shorter. But that doesn't mean that it needs to be dumbed down. As we were saying earlier, you can have a 6-line poem that has got this rich story in it. Short doesn't mean that it's not got huge benefits to it. So I think we've all got to work together to think about what counts as reading, what do we mean by reading, and how can we make sure that young people are having access to as much different kinds of reading, as many different kinds of reading as possible, and as many different kinds of stories as possible, through all different kinds of mediums we can do that. Song lyrics, I think, are a really, really brilliant way. If you look at every Taylor Swift song, it's got a brilliant story within it. That's a form of reading. And so if we can harness those things that are much more appealing than maybe, reading the books that are on the national curriculum, then maybe we can excite people again about reading.
I think that's a really excellent point, and expanding that base of what is considered reading, and it doesn't have to be. There are lots of things saying, well, children have got no concentration now, they can't do that. But actually, if that's not necessarily a bad thing, then we can find ways of embracing that and moving that forward. So if you were talking to, let's say, some parents about their child who they can't get to read, can't get my child to read, my child is always on the computer or on the phone, what's the sort of first bit of advice you would give to them?
Well, first of all, don't put pressure on it. It's never going to work if you're told you have to read. But I would say, if they're on computer games are a form of story. So I try and find something that is connected to that in the first instance, try and get them interested. And then it doesn't really matter what they're then reading, just encourage that reading, whether it's a joke book or a comic or, whatever it is, a shopping list. It doesn't matter what the reading is, as long as you start to encourage it. And small really is fine to just then start to build from there, and then try to kind of find lots of different ways to discuss stories, so that you're not just reading it and then leaving it, but that you're chatting about the story, because that's really, from our perspective at Empathy Lab, that's where the real kind of empathy magic happens. It's in the discussion around the story, not just the reading itself. So even if you're watching something on TV or watching a film, then chatting about the characters and their perspectives and how they're feeling and, what they're experiencing in the story, that's a brilliant way to develop that kind of empathy muscle through story. And the more that you do that, the more that then they'll start to get interested in the power of stories.
I think parents also potentially have lost a bit of confidence when it comes to storytelling to their children. So it's not something that necessarily, it used to be a sort of everyday thing that when you got together as a family, it wouldn't be, I'm going to sit down and tell a story, but there would be some, story about something that happened. And that doesn't happen in the same way. And I think that there's this perfection that happens in the world at the moment because of social media. So they perceive these people who can read perfectly to their children, who can perform perfectly, and they think that's how they have to do it. And actually, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be Judi Dench to read to your children. You can just read it in your own way, because they love you anyway. And as you say, if you're just talking about stories or that kind of storytelling, oh, this happened, and because of that, this happened, actually is a really nice way just to engage in storytelling. And it might be about the loaf of bread you bought. It doesn't matter. It's just really engaging with them. Yeah, okay.
I think there's opportunity for stories everywhere, and I think we've sort of been told, parents have been told that because of literacy at school is a difficult thing to teach, and therefore teachers are teaching it in a very particular skill-based way. But actually, what probably the most useful thing that you can do as a parent or as a caregiver is to say, I wonder, with a child. So I wonder how that character feels. I wonder how that person got to be there, or I wonder what's going to happen next. Like, those wonderings are really powerful ways into stepping into the shoes of a character and thinking about their perspective. And the minute that you're doing that, you're starting to build that social and emotional skill, and therefore the child's empathy. The reading literacy skill will look after itself. It's happening at school, and the more they read, the more that will look after itself. But actually, if you're wondering together, and you can do it with people that you see on the street, or as you sit in a cafe, or somebody that you notice driving along in the car next to you, you can just wonder together about that person, that character. And the more you start to think in that way, the more you're building those skills, and the happier people become, and more understanding of other people, and more interested and curious about other people, and that starts to build those social connections. And the happier children are, the better they learn. So it all is wrapped into each other. But I would just say wonder together.
It's really nice, isn't it? Thank you. Thank you very much. Just tell us where they can find out more about Empathy Lab.
If you go to www.empathylab.uk, then you'll find us. And yes, get involved in Empathy Action Month. It's happening from November. Loads of free resource for that. That's all about taking action, from it being inspired by stories. Take action. And yeah, look us up and come and see what we do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.